Hey Canucks fans, welcome to Clay's Canucks commentary for Thursday, May the 30th. I'm Clay Emo. I'm at Canuck Clay on Twitter. I'm at Clay Emo on Instagram. I'm the founder of the GLCPC, the Good Looking Canucks Positivity Club, and this is my Canucks take, all in one take. In a different car today, this is my son Sean's car. My lovely wife Gail took my car to get some service done after work today, and Sean's going to take my other son Jacob and me to the airport as we're off to Edmonton for the second of Jacob's 2 national bowling championships. You guys know he won earlier this month in Laval, Quebec, the gold medal for all of Canada, and that's with one bowling federation, and this is the second one. So wish us luck. I'm sure I'll post a few updates on here. For today's video, I want to talk about the draft. I'm going to talk about the preparations for this year's draft, and it was buoyed by a video that the Canucks put out yesterday, and it was nice. Like always, they do really good videos when it comes to their draft and draft preparation. They do good videos when it comes to almost everything that they do. And I love these behind the scenes types videos. Yesterday's video was a 4.5-minute video on preparation for this upcoming 2019 draft that's going to be here in Vancouver, June 21, June 22nd. And they interviewed, the director of scouting, Judd Brackett. They interviewed assistant GM John Weisbrod. You saw guys like Jim Benning in the rooms and all the scouts, the professional scouts, and they were talking, obviously preparing. So they, like usual, they didn't show any of their PowerPoints. They didn't show any of their notes, and they kind of blurred out the screens, so you couldn't really tell what they're talking about. But they were saying stuff about guys like, does he compete hard enough? Who's got the best shot? Can we win with this guy? The typical stuff. And obviously they didn't want to name names or give anything away. But a couple of things I found really interesting. One was that it sounds like, especially drafting at 10, they're going to draft for best player available. Some of us say BPA, as opposed to drafting for positional need. You could argue that the Canucks basically have a positional need almost everywhere, except for maybe goalie and center. But they definitely need wingers, and they definitely need good D-men. So Judd Brackett was talking about the fact that they usually like to draft for BPA, best player available, but he used the word intersect 2 or 3 times. If that intersects with an organizational need, then that's even better. And last year that happened, where they had the cool thing is we learned that they had Quinn Hughes ranked number 3 overall. And so not only did they think he was dropped to 7, not only did they think that was the best player available at 7, right? They had him ranked number 3, but it also filled an organizational need, of course, of bolstering the blue line. And we remember that last year, I presume it's after Rasmus Dahlin, of course, and Svechnikov 1 and 2, and then the Canucks had Quinn Hughes at 3. We know how it turned out. It actually went Dahlin, Svechnikov, then Kotkaniemi to Montreal at number 3, then Tkachuk at number 4, and then the surprise Barrett Hayden at number 5. And we all remember, as soon as Arizona took center Barrett Hayden, that means that there was Zadina still, who Detroit ended up taking at 6, and there was Hughes still, who the Canucks were thrilled to get at number 7. So that's kind of cool. The fact that Hughes was their best player available, and he filled an organizational need, and he was the 3rd highest rated prospect for the Canucks, and they fell to the Canucks at number 7. So that was the cool thing that we learned. We heard that last year, but it was nice to hear it confirmed on there. The other thing that was interesting that they were talking about was the fact that when you draft at 10, anything could happen. And that's I kind of joke around. I admit that I'm not a prospects guru. I know enough about I read about what everyone else reads about them, but I don't study them. I don't watch film. It's not my area of expertise. But I've also been saying it's kind of doesn't make sense. It's fun to do mock drafts for sure, but it's so hard to predict who the Canucks are going to get, because we simply don't know what the other 9 teams ahead of them are going to do. So although it's fun, I think it's a fun exercise, but it's not the most accurate, because like I said, you simply don't know if the Canucks were picking 5th or 4th or 6th or 7th, as they would have, if they hadn't lost the lottery, if they hadn't won the lottery, but they started the lottery in 7th. Then I think it's easier to predict what's going to happen. And John Weisbrod even said as much during the video. He basically said, if you're picking 5th, then you only have to have 1 or 2 guys ready, because you can kind of guess the top 3, and then you have 1 or 2 guys ready, and then if you pick 6th or 7th, you need to have 3 guys. But he said that if they're picking 10th, you really need to have 5 guys on your radar, and hopefully, likely, if you do this right, at least one of those 5 guys will be there when you get to 10. So I thought that was interesting as well. So once again, fun to do these mock drafts. I like reading them, because I learn about a lot of the players and the prospects that way. But I don't do them because for me, it's kind of fruitless from a standpoint of I simply don't know what the other teams are going to do before the Canucks. But I guess that's the whole fun of it. One other thing I want to talk about really quick, would love your feedback on this. I went, my season ticket partner, Mike and I, we went to our roller hockey game. We drove to and from our game last night. We won 7-3. Amazingly, we only had 6 skaters, but we actually outskated the other team and outlasted the other team, which is cool. Crazy. 10:30 at night was the game out in Vancouver, so 11:30 it ends. Out of the locker room by 11:50, 12 o'clock. Home by 12:30. Showered, had to pack. It was a late night last night. Regardless, what we were talking about, mostly on the way home, was would the Canucks have an appetite to trade up in the draft to get to 3, 4, or 5, and potentially get their hands on defenseman Bowen Byram. And obviously that would be, you could argue if that's best player available, but that would be a situation of filling an organizational need once again. We know that the top 10 and 12 is littered with centers, obviously a lot of them from the U.S. Then you have, of course, Jack Hughes at the top of that list. And then the WHL guys like Doc and Cousins are all centers. Then you have a couple wingers in Kako, of course, and in Boldy. And then one D-man that's really standing out. Then after that, there's guys like York and Broberg and Soderstrom. So you got to do a little bit of research. But really, obviously, Bowen Byram is expected to go as high as 3, maybe in the top 5 somewhere. Would the Canucks have an appetite to trade up? Not to make a splash because they're hosting the draft, but simply because it's an organizational need. And we were salivating at the prospects of a Quinn Hughes and Bowen Byram pairing down the road. I know a lot of people have been salivating at that, and that's pretty cool. And then when you look at the teams that are picking around 3 and 4, do they need defensemen? Maybe. You could argue that Chicago does. Does Colorado? I'm not sure. They got Barry and they got Makar, right? So we were kind of spitballing what would it take to wrestle the 3rd or 4th overall pick from a team. And then I know a lot of people have been talking about this, on blogs and stuff like that. But I think it would be at least our 10th overall pick, right, this season. So move up to 3 or 4. Maybe a first overall pick a first round pick next year, whether that's lottery protected or not. I don't know how you do that. And likely 1 or 2 young players, maybe a Virtanen and a Juolevi, or maybe a Virtanen and a Demko. And then we obviously talked about would we want to do that? No, I like Virtanen, but maybe you have to take a risk like that to get such a impact player like Byram. So maybe that's my question to you is to move up to 3 or 4 for a chance to get Byram. Let's just say the Canucks wanted to do it. I don't know if they will, but let's say they wanted to do it. Firstly, what would it take? Realistically, what would it take? And Mike and I came up with likely our 10th overall pick, a first round pick next year, maybe lottery protected, and then likely 2 of our younger players, i.e. 2 of the 3 of Juolevi, Demko, and Virtanen. It sounds like a lot on paper, but that's what you get when you want to move up to 3 or 4. Tell me what you think. Is that way too much or is that way too little? And secondly, would you make that trade if you're the Vancouver Canucks? Just something to think about, something that we can talk about as we, I went on this draft theme for this video. So I just want to leave that with you, reflecting on the video that the Canucks released yesterday, finding out that they had Quinn Hughes ranked number 3, something that we suspected, but it's neat to hear it. Talking about drafting best player available versus organizational need and how beautiful it is when those 2 things intersect. And the merits of trading up this year to get Bowen Byram, put a Byram Hughes pairing together in a couple years, and what would it take to make that trade, and would you make that trade? Lots of stuff to talk about. Leave a comment below. I won't be able to look at it until I land in Edmonton later this morning, but I love to read, react, and reply as always. Subscribe if you like to. Like this video if you like to. Thanks for your feedback on the videos recently, and looking forward to the content of these picking up once again as we get closer and closer to draft day. Have a great day, and once again, wish us luck. Oh, I'm not bowling. Wish my son Jake luck in Edmonton, and God bless. Go Canucks, go.